Hello, everyone. Welcome to VR Verdict Podcast, episode 151, our weekly podcast where we talk about everything VR. I'm PJ,
I'm Wookie.
and joining us is one of the coolest VR peeps around, Jose the VR Tech. Hey, man.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Thank you for having me, Wookie and VR.
Yo.
Hey, what
Yeah.
is up, man? Oh,
Um,
dude, what's up?
Yeah, we tried to talk a long time ago, and then our space kind of fizzled out, and so we're trying to
We're rebuilding.
Yep, rebuilding, doing the Zoom thing until then. So
Awesome.
glad to
Hey,
finally chat with you. We've been
oh, dude, I'm
Twitter
so
friends
hyped.
forever, and I mean,
Mhm.
you're you're an industrious motherfucker.
It's really funny. You're one of the very few that have said that to me like out loud, because it's one of those things that I always kind of fantasize after, becoming. That is the template exactly. The industrialist is definitely the term. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize how just being a technical gadgeting, makeshifter, like oh man, I love it. It's
Yeah.
what drives me, man. It's such a it's so weird, right? Because I grew up with like the tech and the hardware geek being such a normal thing that now as I'm getting older, it's like, where did you
Right.
guys go? Where are
They're
the
gone.
yeah, dude? Like I remember like
Phones.
people
Get a new
making
phone.
exactly, man. It's so I miss it, man. And I think the last straw for me, funny ironically, was maybe like around 2008, 2008, 09, right? I think that's when it was, when Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, and they had this character, I forgot his name, man, but that there was like a arms dealer for like he was like hacking the weapons, and he was so he ended up becoming like a third party vendor for everybody in the war system. So this guy elevated himself just by being like a hacker nerd. And I was like, man, wait a minute. If you are smarter than the forces that be, then you don't have to play by anybody's rules, right?
Yeah.
That's where the term of actual freedom came into my mind, right? And it's just it's something that since then I never looked back. It's like I must know, I must break. Every time there's a new headset, I'm more thinking about like, how do I jailbreak it or figure out how to bring out the most value out of this. Because I mean, you guys been in the VR space before as long as I have, right? So you guys know the realities of what happens when business people try to make decisions of what actual enjoyment or how to use our products. So industrialist is
Yeah.
word.
That's
I
awesome
remember-
because go ahead.
I was just saying, I remember I haven't been on Twitter for hanging out with VR Verdict that long. And I remember when I first started seeing you pop up, Jose, and I was like, oh, this guy sounds awesome. And then it just kind of keeps on going like, oh, I did this physical thing. And like when you say that, it's true. Because like just a couple weeks ago, somebody showed me just some little you game emulator pad. And I was like, I haven't seen anybody say, hey, look at this cool piece of tech. I'm like, here, look at my Zune. And I'm still rocking a Zune.
Oh,
And he's like, what? And you're right. Those people are gone. So I was like, I'm following this guy. And
Oh,
it's
man,
been fun ever
appreciate it.
since.
Oh man, that means so much. And that's exactly the reason why I had to, look in the mirror and kind of start putting myself out there and say, look, I can't be waiting for, a John Carmack 2.0 to show up, or a Palmer Luckey, for the new age of VR, right? Because quite frankly, that's kind of the people that most people tend to follow. And to be quite frank, and I love them both, they're not even in the VR industry anymore, right? They're both focused on, Palmer's focused on militarization, and Carmack is on AI. And it's something that I kind of realized. I was like, wait a minute, VR is freaking cool. It's starting to become more accessible than ever. Wait a minute, what happened to the people, making operating systems, or, modifying headsets, building custom headsets?
Yeah.
And I started putting myself out there. I started realizing that nobody was going to seek out my knowledge if they didn't know what I did, right? If I wasn't championing my own work. And I think that's really where Reboot Imagine came from, my company, right? It was kind of realizing that the decision makers and the leaders of this space are like any business, they're in it for themselves, right? And if you want to grow into space and and celebrate your own work, you almost have to do it yourself, right? It's so weird, right? Because it almost sounds like obvious, right? That people tell you, oh yeah, just put your stuff out there and share it. That's what we all do, right? But it's so weird to kind of like make the realization. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that's not what you're supposed to do. It's the only way to do it. It's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I like technology. I've been into technology my whole life. I tinker with things, not on the same level by any means, but like in VR especially, like I started out, I'm like, I'll play these games. Like VR is awesome. Like blew my mind. Like I want to play more. I want to do everything. But like yourself and others are just like you said, you grab a brand new headset and like take it apart, and I'm like, you have no idea how nice and gentle I am with like my Quest 3 when I set it on the shelf. Like, because I have a full-time day job and all that boring stuff. So it's like, if that thing breaks, what else am I going to do tonight? So I appreciate you guys that kind of, like you said, kind of tear things down and find an open source to do most things, and trying to, not just follow like Meta's goals or anyone else, like, Valve or anything. So it's really neat to see, because like when I first kind of ran into you on Twitter, like all I knew is you kind of own and ran an arcade, and I'm like, that's freaking cool. There was a point in time right before the pandemic where I was thinking about doing that, but I don't live in a big city, and I'm like, whatever happens, and then the pandemic happened. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, it's so interesting, and arcades are such an underrated value, not just to VR, but to the entire imagination space of inspiration for the next generation. Like, I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for the arcades, right? Our arcades are of course they're a business, but think about all the psychologies behind an arcade, right? It's a showcase of, they're fighting for your quarters, right? They're not fighting for $10 bills, they're fighting for quarters. So it's scrappy. So you have to be loud, and the games have to be incredibly enticing, right? Daytona USA arcade system, right? Like, anybody who hasn't even played the game, they walk by an arcade, they hear the Daytona, and they just immediately know what it is. There is a connection to entertainment that people often forget, and that, for better or for worse, that was because of the internet, right? The internet made entertainment so accessible that we forgot what finding the gem in the rough, right? That arcade system, that video game, right? Most people, like, when you ask anybody for like their top game of all time, they usually tend to go for a game that's not well known, or a game that's emotionally, they emotionally resonated, were connected with. And that was arcades for me. It was I was a fairly lonely kid. I was too smart for my age, so I couldn't really relate to much kids my age. And arcades were a place where I found a sense of community, right? I found people that were like-minded. I was, and it's just being able to know that my dad, and my mom, because it was like a barcade at the time, before they were called barcades, right? It's Puerto Rico. They just had 3 or 4 machines outside the bar, right? And my dad's like, "Hey, here's $1 and go play over there." But it just, all of the psychology behind it's like, oh man, like, he has fun, I have fun, and I get to meet people, and that just, it was like a seed in my mind and my heart. And I mean, never found, what's up?
I was gonna say, even if the coin machines ate like your $10 bill, like, you never had a bad time in an arcade.
Never. And once again, quarters, right? Think about that. Like, they're fighting for pocket change, and it's such a logic that I dearly miss, right? Because right now everybody's not going for the quarter anymore, right? And we are getting, and for better or for worse, we are reaching that. Yeah, right. It sounds interesting, right? Like, when you think about it, it's like, we're a quarter, under $1. What kind of experiences do you provide for that cost? It has to be an experience that's almost as addicting as sugar, right?
Yeah.
in software, we have seen that before. Like I'm trying to remember Flappy Bird, right? Candy Crush, right? These ad-based games that are essentially paying you. You're playing for ads, essentially,
Yeah.
right? And it's something that the VR space is now starting to enter. I saw it around 2014. I started noticing that VR was going mainstream, and the connections of arcades and VR started making sense because now the developers that were making VR games started looking at. I mean, in 2014, they weren't thinking about the quarter. They were thinking about, the $50,000 procurement for all these headsets and free roam like Zero Latency and The Void and all these big VR arcade franchise. And the pandemic hit, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It changed everything, and now arcades started realizing, wait a minute, we can't afford the $50,000 VR procurement. Now the real developers, the experience makers, the people that they started looking at the dollar, the quarter experiences, right? And now we're now in the licensing space, or the licensing conversation of XR and VR, where arcades are now partnering with vendors and platforms to, make games that can be charged by the minute, right? And once again, now the psychology, it's scrappy and everybody's competing for that attention. What are the games that are going to be so enticing at that low of a cost that you make a return on? Right?
Yeah.
Ghostbusters the game that just came out, that's the multiplayer, that actually a lot of people don't know that there's a game called Ghostbusters VR Academy for LBE. It's the same game, right? So there's that you start seeing the industry recycling of content that we see in traditional games and arcades to kind of it's all full circle. So it's I'm so grateful to my background in arcades and building that industry, because now we're in the mainstream position.
Yeah, and I question, like, if it wasn't for the VR arcade that I ran into, like, I may not have gotten into VR, because I don't know if I would have, if it became mainstream, definitely I'd like, now if like I had never gotten into VR, if I saw a Quest 3, I'd have one. But that's years past, when I did get into VR. And the same with Wookie, when he came up and visited, I'm like, hey, we're gonna go do this, and we did it, and he had the same reaction I did. Like, it just blew us away. But again, back to arcades, like, we're an older generation. Like, I remember when we were tiny little kids, like you kind of mentioned, we'd go out to eat, and there's this one little game, Zaxxon, that Wookie and I would just the food was great, but like, we went to play Zaxxon. And then
Everyone eating carrots and cheese and a pizza burger.
Oh yeah.
Go to the Zaxxon table like every time.
Oh man.
But you'd weekly return to the arcade and see what's new and play like the pinball machine you loved, and but there was a time there, like, when I was like getting depressed when arcades were like disappearing, going away, and it was like, oh man, and it was like you said, the internet, because it had the same thing. Like, LAN parties were a similar thing. Like, they just disappeared once online came out, which sucked. But it was a real nostalgia blast. My wife and I went on a little mini vacation and happened upon this arcade kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it was the kind you go in, you pay $20, you can play whatever you want. So it's pretty cool. But they had just walls of old pinball machine, like any game you could think of, they had it. And it was just like we were there for hours, and my wife isn't like, she plays stuff, but she's not like a gamer. So it was like, just that nostalgia for her too. Like, playing pinball was just, I mean,
only $20 to get in. Like, that's
yeah,
it.
That's a deal.
Yeah.
It's
And
like, I'd be giving them $20 every hour. And
yeah,
it was insane. So yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to see you guys come back from, like I said, the pandemic and stuff, and glad to see that's happening. Again, I live in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. There's no like VR arcade near me. I have to drive a while to get there. But
make them come to you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the cool thing about arcades, right? I call it candy with the medicine, right? It's the perfect way of getting, our generation and forward into an idea, into learning, right? Edutainment is arcades 101. Like a lot of people don't realize that the concept of even just basic engagement we learn from laser tag, right? From video games. Like all we take gaming it's such an underrated teaching method and tool
Yes.
that we don't realize that that's the reason the arcades are so nostalgic.
Yeah.
We learn so much from video games. We learn a sense of community at arcades. We often interact with the first favorite franchise or find the as I like to call it, the forever game, right? Everybody has that in arcade. That's the game that you go immediately to. For me, it's TMNT Turtles in Time, the arcade classic.
Yes.
And if they don't
Yes.
have that, they got the X-Men, arcade game. So it's one or the other, and only at arcades you can kind of experience that, unless you have a friend that has like a lot of retro console collections, and you
And
get brought. What's up?
sorry, the like the X-Men games, the Simpson game, any of those 4-player games, like you
Yeah.
could legit make friends. Just
Yes,
walk up, put a quarter in, and you guys bond. Like
exactly.
crazy.
It's so and it's oh man, it's something that I genuinely chase in what we're doing at my company, because I truly believe that the sentiments that we're talking about are shared at a scale that, from people that are thinking about building arcades or building an experience. Funny enough, even founders and companies that have nothing to do with games, right? They're decentralized business operations where they're starting to realize that work should be fun, right? Life should be fun. I that's something that that's the reason that I'm not, working in a traditional blue white collar job, is because I don't like the concept of a 9 to 5, a current idea of a 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
Why can't I do my already online focused business operations from a beach, right? People always talk about that. They make it seem like such a horrible way, but the realities are they're just afraid of saying what they're really feeling. And I'm afraid of somebody having so much fun that they're not working, instead of saying, how do I make the job so fun that they don't realize they're working?
Are you hiring?
Dude, 2024, that's definitely stay tuned. We are wrapping, and we're looking for technicians all across the nation. So we're building, but that's exactly it. A lot of people, and that's something I talk to, people that talk about my story and study Read But Imagine, is one of the first memories that I had, and it's how do I make life a video game? That's always was something that I genuinely, it's weird. Like I feel like I was born for that. It's my very favorite cartoon show, which is, you'll see the connection with the name of a company. It's a 1990 CGI show called Reboot. It was a Canadian-based CGI animated show that they were video game avatars that were fully aware that they were in this virtual world. And there was a thing called the mainframe, which was essentially unvariable experiences that were brought into the world by the user of video game. So if they don't beat the mainframe, that their world is going to end. So every time that the game or the experience is being brought in, they have to beat the game in the mission in order to save their world. So it happens every episode. There's a new game.
That's
And
pretty cool.
yeah, and this was the first time. We're talking about 1994. This was, I think, the one. It was one of the first CGI shows. I'm almost certain of that. And they were talking about the concept of what we now know as the metaverse, right? They were fully aware that they were connected to a higher consciousness called the user, and they were feeling experiences, and they were all about it. And they were talking about like really deep, philosophy that I, as a kid, didn't understand, and now I take for granted, because I was like, once again, we don't realize that games and the things that we love are teaching us subliminally, right?
Yeah.
They were talking about the concept of finding value in what you provide on a unified level, not on a single level, right? Because everything, is connected in some way, shape, or form, especially through digital experiences, right? That was something that I don't know. It turned me into a futurist, right? A lot of people think that technology and VR and arcades, that they died because of the ability of something better. But in reality, it's that arcades were just like, I guess the first step of us getting back to arcades from a stronger, better position, right? Because arcades died because the internet introduced the ability for people to connect not just to your local group, but to the worldwide group, right? And so
Yeah.
how are arcades surviving now? They brought the same concept to arcades, right? Now Asphalt, which is a well-known, racing game, has, leaderboards from around the world. So now I actually know people who literally are talking to friends in other locations and they're racing, right? A lot of arcade owners have started building scenes where they're connecting to other arcades, and it's like, oh man, this is
Nice.
LAN Party 2.0, man.
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome.
you have a Demio shirt, right? Like, think about when Demio starts hitting arcades on like straight up smart tables with, now you have glasses and now you're paired to people from around the world at your local place. So you got Wookie here, but then you got two other people from, other regions from around the world playing with you guys in real time, right? And you're on a physical space setting, right?
Yep.
That's spatial anchoring, things that just didn't exist before. So now all of that technology is being brought back. Like, arcades are going to become the new retail, the Radio Shack. Honestly, that's what I think a lot about. Arcades are the new Radio Shack. Radio Shack was or Best Buy. A lot of people went to Best Buy then to buy their products on Amazon, but that's really what's about to happen with arcades all over again. It's the first place that we experience new technology, new entertainment, and the people that are taking on that mission to build arcades are fully aware of that now.
Yeah, and I kind of had a similar thought with, again, with the Quest 3 with the MR ability, and just whether it's Demio or like 4V pool, like that you can literally sync a table and walk around it. And like, I'm like, oh my God, this would kill in an arcade, because most people, what hurts VR is they don't have space. Like in my gaming room, I put that big pool table up. I can walk around it, but I run into shit all the time, like, or I step on my cat, So if an arcade, builds on that and you have a space, then people can come and, it's right back to where it was. And that really like excites me, like big time. Oh, that's crazy.
And think about and the best part about it is that the advancements that are going to benefit that, right? Because the arcades are meant not to make current technology accessible, but to introduce you to what's coming next. That's the job in arcade. A lot of people forget that, for example, Mortal Kombat, a franchise that I'm deeply care about, you could not play the real Mortal Kombat experience. And I will argue that's something that I will take to arms for, is the Super Nintendo, which was considered the closest parody to the arcade system. Absolutely not. Just absolutely not. The arcade CRT was hitting 120 frames on a arcade cabinet. The Super Nintendo could never. You know what I mean? And those realities, that led to the beginnings of the arcade fighting community scene, right? That people often don't realize that's where arcade, fighting sticks came from, on modded arcade cabinets. You couldn't just go, like, now you can 3D print them and get them online anywhere. But that's what you did to build an arcade fighting stick back then, right? Spooky, who's somebody who I dearly consider a good inspiration to me, and I known him in New York, right? Evo. Like, this guy, I remember being 12, 13 years old and me seeing him hosting fighting events in Central Park, and with a bunch of people just, and it was never my scene, to be honest. I'm not a big fighting games person like that, but being able to see those movements and then call it revisit, it's like, oh man, I'm such an idiot. I should have been more involved in that scene. Now this guy's running Evo. What? It's yeah, man. It's, to be a tinker is, it's honestly the only way to see the future. History is so cyclical that it's not even funny sometimes. It's like we're it's like, I don't know about you guys, but it definitely makes me question this RPG that we call life quite a bit. Especially now that what we're seeing, right? This is 1989 all over again, right? We're gonna have a Y2K scare in a few years. We're gonna have, it's AI, now they call it AI, right? What happens when technology takes over and blah blah blah, and oh no, the realities of, what happens when people are now spending their times in the digital world all the time, but when you look at the lens of the past, these are the same conversations that people had about the internet, about cell phones, about violent video games, about art, poetry, access to to even libraries, you know what I mean, were considered a threat back then. And funny enough, all of those conversations are coming back again. And it's like, that's just I think that we love resetting our human mind. And the cool thing about it is that we love keeping what we love the most, and we're just going to build up top of it, right? That's truly what drives me, like, honestly, unlike anything else.
Yeah, so you have the arcade. Could you just describe kind of what Reboot Imagine is about then?
Yeah. So Reboot Imagine is the ability, what I like to call it, hand holding at scale, right? So think about all of the pillars of confidence that is required to build an arcade or to build a enterprise environment that uses VR, right? It's much more than just procuring the headsets and finding a partner of software. It's keeping all of that hardware in operations uptime always, right? We're talking, as I mentioned, we're now disrupted again where people are fighting for quarters. What happens if your headsets are down for an hour, right? That's sometimes, depending on the arcade, that's hundreds of dollars wasted, right? And also clients, depending in the regions. I'm in Florida, I'm in Miami, so the patrons and the clients are fully aware that the client's always right here, right? So if a arcade system is down, they'll get their money back, even if they were not intending of playing that game. And I have seen it. They go, oh yeah, I see that your cabinet is down. That experience is da da da. I want my money back, right? And that's something that a lot of people never take for granted in arcades, right? It's something that I've seen for people that want to do a VR arcade. They go like, oh, I can launch a game on Steam and call it a day and wait 10 minutes. But what happens if that player has never tried VR before? What happens if they have, sensibilities that you're not aware of, right? And now you have to account for that in real time, but also you have a line of people that are trying to buy tickets for other things. There's so many verticals that, quite frankly, you need confidence factors, right? So I come from the traditional ITSM background, which is I did IT work for enterprise, worked at insurance companies and all that stuff. And around 2014, when VR started happening, I started realizing that there will be a time where companies, arcades will be looking at these technologies and buying them at mass scale, right? They're not going to be buying just one headset. They're going to be buying one for all of their employees and their operators. And as I mentioned, I want to make life a video game, right? So I'm thinking about my company, my employees. How do I get them to be reliable and also feel free, but also ensure that the work is getting done, right? And that's when I realized it's having those difficult conversations, right? How do you connect with those people? And so it was just like a connection that it sparked, and I started Reboot Imagine, right? So we introduced the Reboot Remote, which is what traditional IT companies call managed service providing. And we just focus on spatial computing and XR. So some people call us Geek Squad for the metaverse or VR. I just call it Reboot Imagine. So that's what we do.
That's awesome. I mean, you've kind of, I think you won the game because, finding something you're passionate about, which a lot of people don't, and then being able to do that to support yourself and all those working with you, like that's quite an achievement. Yeah.
Thank you. It's survival, honestly. A lot. One thing that I try my best to never take for granted is why I get into the things that I do. Right. I don't come from a very financially wealthy background. Buying a Quest 3 is an investment still to this day, right? And fortunately I was able to get it, but think about the cost behind that. And you have to learn how to repair them. You mentioned, like, what happens if a headset repair, shout out to Quest 2 Repair. Quest 2 Repair is on survival mode. He realized that people are buying Quests at scale, and he wanted to build a company and be more, and started focusing on repairing Quest headsets, and built an amazing platform doing so. For Reboot Imagine, it was a similar trajectory, which is realizing that we mentioned life. When you look at how history is cyclical, we are going to see the end, or let's say a funneling of no more billionaires at the rate that we're seeing. Right? We went from, like, I think they said that we went from like 5 to 10 billionaires, and now we have like over 100. I generally don't think that they're going to continue letting the floodgates of billionaires to be made to continue much longer.
Let me get mine first, and then we can close that gate.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Exactly. That's it. That's exactly it. I sort of realized that if the gap is closing and I'm in survival mode, I have to double, triple, quadruple on what I know, what I believe in, even if it means doing the work for free, even if it means devaluing the on the short on the short term what we're doing, because it builds the conversation, it builds the candy with the medicine of what the industry looks like, and it will make it much harder for those that are trying to, let's say, hide the potentials of what we're building. It will be almost nearly impossible. And yeah, I see Reboot Imagine as generally my get out of jail card, my ability to actually build something ethical and valuable, right? A lot of people, I call it the car salesman situation, right? Where if you go to a Toyota dealer, they're not going to sell you a Honda, like they're a Toyota dealer, right? So if you go to Meta and you say, hey, Meta, what's the best VR headset for location-based entertainment and enterprise operations? They're going to say the Meta Quest 3 or the Meta Quest Pro. The realities are that's not the right answer. They're just telling you their flagship devices because that's their job, right? They're not going to tell you, oh, you're in location-based entertainment, so make sure you buy a headset that has the warranties and the insurances for when somebody drops that headset and breaks, that you get a replacement immediately, right? Meta doesn't provide that, right? That's HTC, that's enterprise solutions for hardware repair, right? So how do you get that information if the only people that are giving you that information are the vendors themselves, right? That's I mentioned Radio Shack. That's the reason Radio Shack became so prominent at the time that they did. It was, they blew up really at the era of the cell phone mobile revolution, when multiple cell phone companies started introducing cell phones and all of them wanted to differentiate themselves. And the question started being asked, what's the best option for me? Right. And that's where Radio Shack started introducing all these amazing conversations like, oh, this is the best for this is the best for this. You should do this if you have this, right? That's consulting. But consulting should be also handled with ethics, right? When you look at the VR space, everybody wants to be a consultant, but yet nobody has a neutral stance. They're sponsored by Meta. They're sponsored by this guy. They're sponsored by the vendors, right? So it's a very difficult road that I'm navigating, right? But I'm so focused on the survival and the messaging that I know that amazing people like you guys will eventually realize, like, wait a minute, if I'm going to buy, or start a company, I'm not going to trust the vendor. I should go to somebody that's on my side, on my corner, who's going to actually help me make the right investments for, my arcade or facilitation. So it's yeah, it's an avalanche that I refuse to to be at the sidelines, man. It's like it's a snowball that I saw in 2014 from the DK1, and I saw it, and it's just now it's such a huge avalanche that's about to just cover the human conscious for a few years, and I'm really amped to be just hopefully as involved in the conversation as I possibly can be.
I'm glad to hear it, because they definitely need champions like that are around and preaching that, because like you said, the ethics part, we all know where that's at with many
Yeah.
pieces of VR and MR and all that fun stuff. So yeah, that's again, hats off to you for
Thank you, man.
trying to lead the charge, man. That's
I appreciate
commendable.
it. And thank you.
Well,
And it's a part of you guys, man. You guys give the platform, right? It's hard to champion oneself all the time, right? So I'm so grateful for platforms like you guys has created with VR Veridic, because the truth is that, we need to highlight the misfits and the breakers and the punk rock, right? We
yes.
gotta be punk rock now more than ever, right? A lot of people don't realize that the problem with punk rock, and this is I'm a hip hop head. I'm more hip hop than punk rock, but I love punk rock. Blink 182, Bowling for Soup. Those were my bands growing up. But the problem with punk rock, personally for me, is that punk rock celebrates acceptance of defeat at the end of the road, and that's something that people don't realize, is that you know, a lot of people, the famous saying is, you know, you live long enough to become the villain, right? So when you look at the punk rock leaders of our technology space, of VR or technology, they got defeated and gave up, right?
Yeah.
And it's a difficult conversation. A lot of people don't like having it because it hurts. It absolutely hurts. But if we have to have the difficult conversations once again, like Carmack abandoned the VR industry. Palmer Luckey was forced to abandon the VR industry. So who are the VR superheroes that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of people don't like accepting that, but it's the truth. It's like, hey, you know, we need to become our own heroes. Like we need to let people know, like, right, that's what created Carmack in the first place, right? Him being a modder, being able to build the amazing great things, and then Meta came along. They needed more technical ability, and they tapped his expertise, right? And that's really where we're at now. It's like the technical leaders are not leading. They're just it has to change, man. It just absolutely must change.
Yeah. Were you gonna say something, Monkey?
Yeah.
Remember a while back, maybe.
Oh, that's fine.
We've progressed. Sorry, cat's on me, clawing my foot.
Hey, happens.
Say, hey, Jerry, get off my foot.
So, I'm kind of curious personally, like, because when we entered the podcast space for VR, because we had a previous podcast that was like a 5 or 6 years long, the F Reality podcast was the only other podcast in town. And I know there was, you know, different group back then, and well, half the group's still there, and then now you and Adam are on there. So how did that come to be? I was so excited, because you and Adam, like, Adam is so amazing. She's been on a couple times, like, just awesome. So when you guys popped up with the old, you know, two of the old crew, I'm like, what the hell is this? And I was really excited, and it's been really fun to listen to and watch. So how did that happen?
Oh man, shout out to Zim. Zim and Rowdy. They gave me the chance. They started noticing very quickly what I was looking to do. And I remember, oh man, it's like a blur, like a year ago now, a year and a half. But I remember getting the DM from Zim and said, hey, Karam Malachi Sanchez, who runs VR Toronto, incredible soul. He, you know, somebody that I was talking to, telling them about my aspirations. He recommended me to Zim, and Zim just sent me a very gracious DM, say, hey, you know, paying attention to the stuff that we're doing, and you know, we have a podcast called F Reality, and he was not shy about it. We want to disrupt the format of how a VR panel looks like, right? And at that time, I thought that, you know, as me being a minority leader, and as I said, not afraid of having the conversation, I was like, perfect, they're giving a minority a platform. This is great. This is how, you know, but it was much more than that. It absolutely was much more than that, because at that moment, I didn't know that Adam Bombati would be part of the panel. And when when we had the first full podcast test as a crew, having Adam there, it was just like, oh man, Zim really meant what he was actually going to do, right? It's much more than just, you know, playing the token card or any of that sort. He wanted to make sure that handy with the medicine, right? He knew that he was going to be putting unexpected faces on the platform, and he wanted to make sure that the expectations were met, and if not, you know, exceeded. And that was for me one of the best opportunities to enter the mainstream VR community, and it's something that I am still grateful to this day, and I hope that as long as they need me to be a part of the F Reality podcast crew for as long as I can be.
And that dude's for real, because when we first got going, you know, I release YouTube videos here. Like, I'm not a content creator, I'm not a YouTuber, but I remember, like, I'm bad with names, I forget names very easily, but one of my earliest videos, I think it was Ragnarok, so it wasn't too super long ago, but like he commented on my video and I knew who he was because I've listened to the podcast since we started. And I was like he's checking things out on a very tiny level because
Yes. He loves this industry.
he does, and you
loves
can show it.
genuinely, yeah.
And ever since then, he'll every now and then randomly either it's a tweet or a comment on like a video I do. He's there, and I'm like, it just throws me off guard. I'm like, Jesus.
It's when you love the industry that loves you back, you get anxious, you get paranoid, you get a little voice in your head that just tells you to love it more, love it harder. Zim, the absolute appreciation that the community has for him, and Rowdy and Adam, and showing for me too. I must not complain. It's something that it's difficult to take for granted. It's so difficult. You mentioned it, right? That comment, it's so importantly valuable because we're so aware that this is an emerging and growing industry. We're not seeing the mainstream numbers yet, and we will, right? And unfortunately for us three, right, in the call, we're going to be the unfortunately the bitter, disgruntled, jealous ones because it's going to be the 12-year-olds and the younger that are going to be really enjoying and benefiting from all of the things that we're building towards. But those little glimpses of like the comments from Zim, it's like a good, like me being a futurist, it's a glimpse of 10 years from now, right? At scale, right? You're going to be seeing similar messages from the entire industry. And it's so incredible, right? Because even for you, PJ and Wookie, like the realities are that you guys have built, voices for yourselves too. Like everybody in the industry knows VR Verdict, right? It's a small industry. It's so interesting how we don't realize how small this space is.
Yeah.
But we're once all of the floodgates open and the cup of water fills up, we're all rising to the top, even through association and through just straight enjoying this space, right? Like, think about it. Like, I sometimes think about that quite a bit. Is think of content creators like Adam, right? Or even Zim or even me, knock on wood, is like one of us, a statistic, is going to become a multi-billionaire, and we're going to take, it's like jet fuel into the fire of this industry, right? It happened with Palmer, and it's going to happen, once again with somebody else, and everybody's going to benefit from that. And
yeah,
that's really where I'm at.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but like this community is pretty. I've never experienced anything like it. Like we started just by, we had a different podcast, like I said, and then Wookie and I did a VR episode, and it like went off the charts compared to our other episodes, which were fine. But so like, hey, there's something there. We're both getting into this. Let's talk about it. And then it was just Wookie and I, who are brothers, and we don't talk a lot. So we're like, we got to do something different because if I listen to it, I'm like, I don't enjoy this, but I don't like to hear myself talk anyway.
I know
so
exactly what you mean. I'm the same way.
So we just started reaching out to people, and I've never had a single person say no. I had one person out of the over 100 now. They just said, well, what numbers do you pull? And I told them.
Oh,
and
man.
he never got back to us. I'm like, okay, tuck off. But other than that one thing, like out of hundreds, like everyone's like, yeah, we'd fucking love to talk. And we've been on hiatus for like 4 months or more, and almost daily I get people like, hey, I want to talk. Like,
Hey.
Well, the weirdest thing is, again, PJ's way more into this space. I'm passionate about it, but I'm busy, and PJ's making all these connections. The weirdest thing is, one day I was like, oh, I should get on Twitter and just try to like things and retweet the people that I respect and all that stuff. And like the second person to follow me is Tommy Palm, which is the CEO of Resolution Games, because we played D-Neo with him when he was launching that stuff. And I have like apparently his dream car. I own it. Like it's a Swedish car. And I missed the first episode when we talked to him. I was actually down buying the car. And PJ's like, all he want to do is talk about the car. And I'm like, what about VR? He's like, well, no, we didn't. He just want to talk about the car.
Yeah.
But we've played D-Mail with him and a couple folks from his company, and it's just like, I didn't see that one coming. PJ's
Yeah.
just been really good about networking and
I
Yeah.
haven't
the
done
small
anything
space.
special.
Just asking people, like,
The
you know,
dot
it's
maker,
great.
yeah. I
But
love
it's
that. The bridge maker.
yeah, but it's the community.
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask other communities, the AAA games makers, and they wouldn't even ask
No,
what
no,
numbers you pulled. They would just be like, "Here's a middle finger."
yeah, literally, they won't even
Like,
reply.
yeah, you get
I
lucky if
think,
you get the finger.
yeah, seriously. I think it has to do a lot with the what makes one love VR, right? There's so many, VR is probably the best forefront of a virtualization of human connection, unlike anything we've ever seen. Right, we're about to get, and I mean, I'm already dabbling with it, but now we have the ability to have, cloud remote rendering while using eye tracking, and
Yeah.
Lex Friedman had an interview with Mark Zuckerberg, and they showcased the technology where you can actually have a face-to-face virtual conversation and still get the human connection and all of the sensations that you feel when you're having a deep, meaningful, personal conversation. You get to do that now from a virtual space, right? People that do VR or have fallen in love with it are most of the time internet natives, right? They're embedded with the technology. They use all of these tools, so when they use VR, they're already applying all of that into the virtual connection, and it's just it locks in. It's as close as making a friend at, at your favorite community forum or something of that form. It's the closest thing as making friends in, a backyard or in your school, right? It's really,
And part of that, like, to me, like, I know, like, some people, like you mentioned earlier, like, technology is evil. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. But to me, again, Wookie and I are brothers. I live up in Wisconsin. He lives down in the Carolinas. Since the pandemic, still, we used to, like, every year visit each other and stuff. We haven't done that since. So, like, when you can pop a headset on, be in a movie theater, be in the same room, be in a game,
It makes a difference. Yeah.
just with an avatar like Wookie's picture here, like, because he looks very similar to that. Seeing that in VR and reacting like you, I feel like I've got this. I hung out with my brother,
yeah.
and when you're talking about, when the more face-to-face type stuff, like,
And it's coming, and it's
yeah,
coming fast, right? That's for me why I keep telling people the Quest Pro, the Quest Pro, the Quest Pro. Don't pay attention to the mainstream. The Quest Pro has eye tracking. When when all of these amazing tools start really, honing in the human connection, the eye contact is going to change things unlike anything, right? Because that's going to introduce depth sensing in a virtual space. So the weird the weird feeling when you're getting close to somebody physically, that you feel like a physical vibration when you're about to hug somebody, all of those weird intricacies are going to be virtualized, and you will feel as you're talking to your brother in the same room. And I can say that as somebody who uses VR and have been shown these demos behind the scenes. They're so deeply profound that I still have not been able to shed off the emotional weight of how beautiful a real virtual connection. That's weird saying that, real virtual connection. It's something that I can't wait to help to bring to arcades and to, these kind of platforms, and talk about it with you guys, right? Because it is important. Connection now is going to be probably the most lucrative thing. As I mentioned, the gates of becoming a billionaire are going to disappear, because everybody's just going to have everything they want and be happy and not complain. So in a world like that, although it sounds scary because a lot of people talk about it and it sounds dystopian, the realities are we're going to have more time to find ways to self-value ourselves, not just based on what we provide, but how we connect, how we talk, how we build communities, right? That's the new companies. When everybody has, universal basic income and everybody's making money, and nobody really has an incentive to work anymore because everybody's getting enough to pay their rent and have a basic job or not needing to work at all. communities are going to be the way that people start going like, what happens if we funnel all our universal basic incomes towards this direction? Right? Community-based growth is the new companies. Everybody's going to be, you know, literally we're entering the era of I don't know if you guys are into anime, but there's this anime called My Hero Academia that all of the kids have superpowers. They call quirks, and every single person in this world, there's a few of them that don't, but that's the era that we're going to enter. Ronnie Abovitz of Magic Leap says he calls it the Harry Potter and Avengers world in real time. But it's true. Everybody's going to have superpowers because I mean, I was talking about it earlier on Twitter on the podcast. Like, you may announce the AI pin, right? And a lot of people talk about it like it's a silly thing, but it's like, wait a minute. I honestly have not touched my iPhone in like 3 days. Right? I haven't. I don't use apps anymore the way that I used to. Everything that I look up online, it has a web app, right? So, and most of those things can now be automated if you have a really good AI system. So why have a cell phone when you can use that pocket real estate to maybe have a pocketable VR headset, and now you have a portable computer that does everything, and now you have a little AI pin to, you know, do your basic, hey, can you read this email for me? Can you navigate me? Blah, blah, blah. Or, you know, the smartwatch, right? That's the new side. That's becoming, you know, a Android, right? That's as close as we can get to becoming, you know, robotic humans. So
It's kind of where the 4-year-old PJ was like, someday I want a fucking R2D2 unit. And that's kind of where we're at.
You can buy. Did you see the one that they introduced for I think it was Force Awakens, the BB-8 robot that has like a full gyroscope, accelerometer, it's like
Falls
$5,000.
around,
Yeah, but that's a full-on spatial robot. I actually know somebody that put an actual the new gen Roomba system on it, and now you know they're using it because it has the Roomba AI has like the motion detectors for the walls, and it has angular height distancing, so now it can go up ladders and stuff like that, right? So oh dude, it's nuts, right? They also have the Aibo robot at Sony, right, which is a straight up dog that, thanks to it's almost been on in the market now for like 10 years, and thanks to the advancements in AI in the last 2 years, like if you look at videos of Aibo, the robotic dog, from when it released and today, it acts like a real dog. It's so wild that, you know, these technologies are only going to they're just going to keep going and going and going to the point, as you said, you're going to have your own personal R2D2, you know, assistant that, you know, will also serve as a bodyguard for you. So it's awesome stuff.
Finally.
It's nuts.
And that's, you know, selfishly, you know, I mean, I'm mid-40s right now. It's like, and we've seen this on a couple of different shows here and there, but it's like, I just want to make it until I can put my consciousness in the cloud and remain there, you know.
We're almost
but
there, man.
The way shit's going, it's just like the AI stuff, like it's going so freaking quick. Like my wife and I just watched, I don't remember the name of it, but it's a show that like kind of goes from like the 50s to now and back and forth through time, and it's just like
dark.
Well, a little bit, but you don't realize like from 1950 to and I'm, you know, people have said this, but like 1950 to 1980, like how much shit has changed.
Yep. No, I think it was the show Dark.
No, because
that was going back to the 50s and stuff too.
Yeah, that's a good show. This is a different one. It's like a crime show, but yeah, and then it's just like the last 3 years, like it's like tripled or even probably more the speed of that. It's just like, how the hell?
Inspiration. Inspiration. That's I truly believe that's how you get things to have momentum. It's to inspire. It's to I forgot how the saying goes, but it's the dreamers are inspired by the dreamers' inspiration, right? So it always keeps cycling. We tend to build what we imagine, and that's exactly what has happened in the last 3 years. I think that we're now reaching the point, because just like yourself, I also have been looking forward to back up my consciousness and being able to, you know, take my eyes and my sensory skills beyond what a physical human body can can experience and see, right? Like I'm ready to, shoot my consciousness in a rocket to a black hole. I want to see it all, right?
At least one copy.
At least one copy, exactly. And that's the cool thing, is that we are starting to have those conversations. You mentioned a show that stitches the past in the future so well. This is something that and this is a thought experiment that I give myself all the time, is think of your actual, let's say, first grade classroom. Name every single student in that classroom, including the teacher, and you're going to have a really difficult time. You might be able to maybe remember 2 names, right?
Not me.
And well, hopefully you remember at least a teacher or at least a face, right? But
Yeah.
What happens when an AI system asks you, hey, PJ, what are the 2 students' names? And now it knows 2 names. And now that AI system is also doing that at scale to everybody around the world. And eventually that AI system will go like, wait a minute, what 2 names did you say again? And then those 2 names get stitched up to those 2 names, and all of a sudden your entire classroom just got reconstructed. And all of the memories of every single person in that classroom gets reconstructed. And now those memories, they start remembering, what was on that poster, what was on that wall, what was the color of that day. And these systems that are, working at a very intense rate are going to be stitching up reality in such a way that we are not going to require backing up our consciousness. There's a whole full-blown digital version of you that just shows up like, oh, hi, I'm you, and I carry all the memories about you, even the ones you think that you don't remember or do. You know what I mean? And that's going to become our personal assistants at scale. It's like, hey, what did I say next week? Hey, you know me better than anyone. How should I respond to this? Right? That's how you're going to back up your consciousness. It's not going to be, I mean, for now, maybe we'll be able to, but the fact that we're getting to a feasible way of reconstructing, the human experience, the consciousness, it's only once that gets done, like you mentioned, maybe 3 years from there, that we are able to back up the actual biology of our brain matter.
You just blew my mind.
Now, to put an interesting spin on that topic too, my girlfriend's really big into astrophysics and all sorts of stuff. So she's sitting there talking to me about the same thing, because she had it calculated when we were probably going to get the singularity of us going into the machines, and then that what's that show with that Sheldon guy?
Oh, Big Bang
Big
Theory.
Bang.
Yeah. And he was like going crazy on a whiteboard or something in the background, and he's like 50 years, and she's like, well, that's exactly when I thought. Now it's accelerated because AI is faster.
Yep.
But like, she's like, somebody in that show is doing the math, because she
Yeah.
had the same values.
Yes, the Big Bang Theory, actually, their calculations on their
Yeah.
boards are actually real. It's real math.
It's like, she's like, somebody's doing some math there. I'm like, that sounds good to me. But
Yeah.
she was like, no, here's the thing though, kind of like, the Star Trek teleporting, is it killing you and your copies living on?
Yeah.
When you do the singularity and you upload yourself, you're still going to probably be here, and the singularity is probably going to kill you.
Yes.
So like, you don't get to live forever. A copy of you does. So it's like,
of you.
the selfish us in our body is going to be like, oh, that one gets to go off and live in the universe, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
I'm still here. So I don't think it's going to be the paradise, but it will be paradise for the other copy of you.
Exactly. And I think that, it's
Boom.
This is where it gets. Yeah, honestly, I'm glad. Hey, if you're having those conversations, I'm ready to have them with you.
I should get the girlfriend on the line, because
I love
she's
this conversation.
closer to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But the truth is that maybe that's what's already happening to us.
Yeah.
Right. A lot. I'm of the big believer that, a lot of people talk about, if this is a simulation theory, which I truly believe we are in one, then
she's leading up in that. She's like, actually, the math points to like, it can't not be a simulation.
It cannot
I'm
be,
like,
right?
I'm trying to eat my fucking Fruit Loops here.
For me, the Big Bang is what I compare the Big Bang to, is the every time I think of the Big Bang explosion that that everyone talks about, what I imagine? I imagine the American Megatrends BIOS screen boot up process. Like, remember like old school computers when you see like the BIOS screen shows you how much RAM?
Yep.
Is it
Mhm.
that's what I imagine the Big Bang explosion to look like.
Which version?
Uh,
Because like mine is still like a 2016 American Megatrends when I boot
there
up
you
the
go.
computer that I'm on
You
right
still
now.
see
Because I'm like,
that? Well, I mean, they
yeah,
haven't abandoned it, so there you go. You
like
but
there it
yeah,
is.
that's what I really imagine what the Big Bang explosion looked like. It's nothing but a computer booting up, and then you're just stuck in the DOS screen, and whoever was on the other side of the terminal went like, okay, how do you build a perfect sandbox, right? Then you
Hmm.
build first the variables and then a way to create a three-dimensional space and be funded three-dimensional space. Then you create limitations. But what inspires you to build a computer or let's say an AI system? It's to learn something, right? So that's where I'm at when it comes to simulation theories. Like I've already accepted that we're in a simulation.
Well, she's already
So
like doing stuff like, oh, it's probably humans from us from the future that forgot their past. So they're setting up a simulation of like, what we would do to the Egyptians, and
yes.
like, what are they gonna, how are they gonna figure it out? What are they doing? What are they doing? And then
Yeah,
if
and you
it's just
can't
to
get
learn,
involved and you can't be involved
right?
because then you're
You're just
poisoning
watching.
the data. You can only watch.
Hmm.
You must ensure that nobody is fully aware of it. So you got to keep updating
And as soon as we
the
are aware of
variables.
it, then it gets shut down. So all these people wanting to know the aliens and all this stuff, yeah, she's all on
Yeah.
top of that.
Oh
And
yeah.
then
And
like
that's yeah.
10 years ago ish, maybe a little sooner than that, I was working on sooner than that. I was working on some procedural generation stuff, and I was like, I gotta chunk this so only the stuff near to the player is actually rendered. And she like came online, like, you can't see the me talking
Yep.
with my body, but it's like, Ugh. She's like, wait, what did you just say? Because she's thinking about this stuff. She's like, oh yeah, that's where the tree doesn't make a noise, and like, yeah, she's like everything, and
There's no tree even rendered.
yeah, it's not rendered yet. Yeah, there could be a dice roll saying the tree fell over, and you're going to walk up and it's just going to spawn in and it's already fallen over, but it never
Yeah.
actually fell over, but it's already fallen over. And that's what we talk about on car rides.
I love that. I need to join a car ride with you guys, but that's it. Unfortunately for me, that's like my mind with like that's the problem with being a futurist that sees all this stuff and wants to be desperately a part of the conversation is that like those conversations never stop in one's head. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It makes me, the cool thing about simulation theory personally for me is that it profoundly, no matter which, for me, it's three realities of simulation. Either we're being used as what you mentioned to experience and learn, either we're used as a collective variable to maybe as a battery,
hmm,
or our singular existence creates enough variables to keep the system moving, where, memory.
hmm,
Um, all three of them puts one thing at the top of it all, and it's the human experience.
yeah,
So what other, let's say religion or philosophy tells you to live no matter what, right? There's ideologies that teach you to live for being kind, to live for this way.
hmm.
No, like simulation theory just tells you to live for you, right?
Experience.
It's the purest form of of beneficial selfishness there is, right? Because it tells you, hey, if you hone in your skills, everybody benefits from this, right? And it's something that a lot of ideologies are having so much difficulty of like expressing, because it's like, oh yeah, be good, but just don't be that good. Also, don't be arrogant, even though you're not being arrogant, you're just uplifting, everybody for the benefit of all of us to be raised up. You know what I mean? That's the job of a superhero, right? And to end this thought process, that's what I love about what's happening now with VR and AI and all these advancements. It's that everything now has become accessible. So the how do you elevate yourself when everybody is now in the primordial soup of access?
That's
Superheroes have to rise up. It's
that's
engineers.
and then
Yeah.
that's that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's like the Star Trek equation, how they live in the future or whatever,
Yes.
but that's where we get back to like the master and apprentice stuff that we've gone
Yes.
away from. So if like somebody's like, you know what, everything's taken care of, like you said, if we get to that point and everyone's at the same level and then nobody can set themselves apart, well, then you focus on a human skill and go be the best sculptor you can fucking be.
Oh man,
You know,
I
something like that. So
dude, oh man, you just gave me goosebumps. I can't wait for 2 years from now when you open up YouTube and you're gonna be like, how to become a millionaire in a week, and you're gonna see this guy's like, what's up, you guys? I'm gonna teach you how to make $1 million in about a month. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go to a trade school and you're gonna become something called a plumber, and this is what a plumber does. And we're gonna be like, whoa, what? You know what I mean? Like basic skills are back, right? And human connections are back. The human values are back. And then now we're going to start seeing is the people that are pushing that line forward, right? The scientists, the engineers, the tinkers. It's punk rock all over again, right? No, Apple, I will not be okay with just using your hardware at this level. I want more, right? We're back to being greedy, to be ambitious, to want to. No, we don't. Like, people are going to start talking about, Mars. We haven't even touched Mars yet, and people are now talking about what's next, right? I love it. I'm here for it, man. Like,
I'm not a big fan of Mars. Again, girlfriend's probably, you know, run the numbers and told me them. I don't know, but I'm like, I just want my asteroid base. I don't care about Mars. I just want my thing where I can like, well, I don't like this spot. I'm going to scooch it over here with the big boosters.
Same.
That's a lot.
I'm all to be honest with you, like I want satellites. Like that's something that if I were to, have those crazy conversations, like I love the idea of owning, fleets of satellites and building a decentralized real internet, right? Starlink got so close to it, but then they turn into a military Trojan horse, right? I always think about it, it's like, man, like Starlink could have easily have built, the next gen global internet. But the problem with that is, and I think that's what happened, is that the world does not want to connect just yet.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason for that is because we're being told it doesn't. Right. So somebody's going to have to start. Yeah. When the human connections start being the focus, you're going to start seeing people with like-minded, interests and ideologies kind of slowly find each other. And I think that's what's going to build the internet, right? That's what built, even Facebook, all of these platforms and networks were built because of a way that people just wanted to connect. Right. Yeah. So when all of these companies, all of these, or geopolitical barriers or whatever starts really trying to say, you guys shouldn't talk over there, like keep yourselves over there. It's the connections are going to become so valuable. I can't wait for, for me, it was IRC. You guys probably remember IRC, right? IRC was like that's really where you actually access the internet back then, right? That's where you got it.
News stories from IRC was nuts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's because, it was easier to censor back then, right? And IRC was a great way of building that. And I think that's what's going to happen all over again. It's that we're going to have so much access now that people are going to realize, wait a minute, this thing that we're being given to connect it's not the real connection that I'm looking to get, right? It's a guided connection, and we're going to start seeking better ways to connect.
Going back to Starlink though, PJ, have you seen Starlink in the sky?
Have I seen it?
Yeah.
Like low rate links.
Like looking up at the night sky. You might see it when you're on your walks, but you'd know it because it's like literally a string of tinsel, just a string of lights moving in unison.
Yeah.
And it kind of looks like if you look at a fast, like a time lapse of, like the galaxy or, the Milky Way or whatever, just kind of scooting through the sky. It behaves like that. Like it's part of another layer outside of our, stratosphere. And it's just this line of dots, just like, it looks like a rip in the sky. Like something just made something weird happen.
Yeah.
And when you see it, you're going to crash your car. Cause I almost did. I'm like, what the hell is that?
I'll have to look for it tomorrow morning when I get out there in the dark.
Oh, they're so fun.
There's no telling where. You'll just like look up and it's like a perfect perforated line of lights in the sky, just way up there going like scooting across. It is mind blowing. It's kind of freaky. Kind of like there's so much junk up in my sky, like in Firefly when they're like, it's getting awful crowded in my sky.
I honestly think about that quite a bit too. It's like what's going to happen, when yeah, solar storms, because we're start really, are getting in and start disrupting all these satellites, or they start crashing into each other. That's something I mentioned Metal Gear Solid as an inspiration for me, but it's because I genuinely fear, you know, advanced warfare.
Yeah.
I truly do. It's something I genuinely love to be scared of. Right. There's a funny harddrive.net parody article, and I forget, the headline goes, "Guy abandons all his anti-military biases for a Gundam." You know what I mean? To be
Yeah, I get
honest,
that.
yeah, I truly am of that mind, because I want to see what all of these advancements in AI and robotics and virtual, unfortunately they are being used now in military, and it's kind of scary, because like, oh man, like I talk a lot about making life video games, that like there's people that are doing the same thing for military. They're really looking at Call of Duty, and they're like, yeah, I want that, I want that, I
Yeah,
want that. You know what I mean?
it
And it's,
happens. Yeah, like
yeah,
this the whole Star Wars project. Like, hey, we saw it. Why can't we do it? And it's like I'm sure the engineers are like, budget.
yeah. Budget. Exactly. It's like, you got the right money, we can make it happen. Yeah, the plasma
Yeah.
lightsaber, like, yeah, dude, like it's crazy how we are now at a place where, yeah, it's really going back to what Ronnie said, Avengers and Harry Potter
Yeah.
everywhere we go. And it's even though like I said, I love the idea of it all, it's quite scary to because
Well,
everybody's gonna not benefit from it. It's,
Yeah.
yeah,
well,
yeah.
there's multiple facets and ways to do this. So like, is that 20 years ago already? Almost 19 years ago or so. Um, I was involved in building some robots at a factory. So I haven't really always been really great at like the physical tinkering, like what you're doing, like getting there in the guts. Like I could probably do it, and I've soldered stuff and figured it out, but I'm more in like the design phase. So we had a problem, and it's just like a car parts factory. And I'm like, well, if we do this, two conveyor belts with teeth at this space, it can stock up 1,000 parts. We don't really need the third shift of people. And the guy in the maintenance crew that was doing the potentiometers and the motors and stuff, he was like, "You think that'll work?" I'm like, "All we got is time, baby." So we did it, and it worked.
I love that.
And unfortunately, we did lose the whole third shift of people, but they were given opportunities elsewhere, and they just wanted the third shift and didn't care about working.
Yeah.
Like we're like, you go over here and you still have a job. They're like, no, we missed this. So
Self-worth.
they like a couple of incidents. They tried to like kill my girlfriend with a couple of things like accidents at the factory. They were threatening to slash my tires and stuff. But it's also like the job we replaced is not a job that a human should have been
Should ever
doing.
do.
It
Exactly.
was parts for like the console of a Jeep that were printed, the lithographed metal, and they were grabbing them off a hook coming by and then putting them on another hook or something. So we just had a robot squeeze it with air, put like they came over faster than we needed them, so we just stocked up 1,000 parts, and then we pulled those 1,000 parts off and like kept the line going. And I was like, hey, look at that, my idea worked.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
I think people getting back to the physical stuff is so neat because I just saw a video where like some guys that like to make random weapons or whatever, like engineer stuff, somebody handed them like a little survival axe. It's like a pipe, like 3 hand lengths long, and you smack it and this little axe blade like snaps out. And they're like, oh hey, we can make a
I've
bigger one.
seen
Say
this.
they made the
Yes.
battle axe. And I was
Yes.
like, now that is what 10-year-old Wookiee needs to be doing, like building like it's I don't know if you've seen that video, PJ, but it's just literal like here's a metal staff and they like shake it and 2 giant battle axe blades like flip out and they're like locked into place.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I would use it for. I
You
don't
want
know,
it.
but I would, I would make a dull one
Yeah.
that I could practice with. But like that's the stuff people should be doing. It doesn't really
Yeah.
need a thing, but you made something cool. We're almost validating that with like the good parts of YouTube. People making weird crap like that
Yeah.
and actually getting paid to do it
Yeah.
is
The
what we
human
should be
experience. I
doing
fully
before.
agree.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's those bright spots and all the crazy crap going on. Because I think, not to bring up anything bad, but you had like a tweet about a month ago and you were saying something like, something's not succeeding because somebody doesn't want certain races to succeed. I think you tweeted
Yeah.
that, and I was like, fuck that shit. Like,
Word.
I don't know. I didn't know what was going on, but I think I
Yeah, no,
liked it
no,
and
it was,
retweeted it.
yeah,
I was
and
like, fuck that.
and it's really
Yeah.
funny that you said that. Yeah, I 1000% agree, and it's really interesting, right? Because a lot of people, when they think when I speak of race, of course, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm a minority, I'm a Latino. When I speak about race, I'm not really speaking about the Latin race, to be quite honest. I'm talking about the nerd race, the geeks, the tinkers, the modders, right? I'm thinking about Salius Bradley. I'm thinking about, yeah, myself. I'm thinking about people that are out there modding and hacking and pushing the narrative of the industry, not a brand, right? And there's a lot of corporate interests that don't want that to succeed and grow
Right.
and expand on.
The same thing with the billionaire thing. Once they've made theirs, they want to lock it out. Like you guys now, the right to repair. You guys, you take a screwdriver to that damn headset. Guess what? We're gonna try to throw you in jail because you're threatening our industry, not the industry, their industry. And it's like, fuck that shit.
100%. The right to repair is something that I personally, donate every chance I get. The right to repair, a lot of people don't realize that it's not just the right to repair your products. It's the ability to not let a company dictate how long you can use a product for.
Planned
Apple,
obsolescence.
exactly. Planned obsolescence made sense in an era where humans were doing 80% of the factory work, right? So you didn't want to have people building products, assembling products all the time because the numbers and the demands were getting crazy. So they were trying to find a halfway step, right? One of the things I think a lot about is the light bulb. If you actually look at light bulbs before planned obsolescence kicked in, light bulbs could last about 20 years. Now
I'm
it's
starting
like
to see that every week we're blowing a light bulb in the damn house, and it's like as a kid, I never remember replacing this many fucking light bulbs.
Man. Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
It's exactly that. It's something that you can only find out if you're consciously, like you said, subconsciously realizing. It's like, oh man, like I'm wasting a lot of light bulbs here, but people are not realizing that's happening with everything. Food is getting smaller amounts. What you used to get even on a product purchase, you don't get as much benefits anymore. Before, and for better or for worse, right? When you bought a laptop computer back in the day, it came with a bunch of crappy software, but they were there to bring value and discounts to your software, right?
Well, it came with stuff like a slipcase, and it came with things like that. Now they're accessories, and I will never forgive humankind, or I like Microsoft as much as you can, but like we bought the first OG Xbox, blew our minds. Everything's great. Comparison is the thief of joy, but when you see what the Japanese folks get with their consoles, and it's like they won't buy it unless they get a bunch of cool crap.
Yep.
But it's kind of like
value added.
I want the cool crap.
Exactly. And it's applying to everything, man. It's on everything. It on even schools, right? Like or living, right? I pay attention. Like I said, I'm building a company. I really am trying to get to a billionaire as fast as possible. So you got to pay attention to like everything in our sector. Real estate, right? Real estate is something that a lot of people don't ever think about, but BlackRock, which is known as one of the biggest portfolios, and you're laughing like, yeah, man, like they already said it. Like the narrative of building a world where everybody gets whatever they want and they're going to shut up and be happy. That's actually a quote from the founder of BlackRock, because they're buying all of the real estate. They're waiting for two catastrophic events. Some people call it the silver wave, and also the demise of the ownership of property. And those two things are going to happen in tandem. The silver wave, or the great death, as funeral industry calls it, is that a lot of people don't realize that like almost 60% of I'm talking specifically in the United States, they're over the age of 65. So there's going to be a massive, just if the pandemic was a sign of that, it's going to be like 4 or 5 times much more catastrophic. And what happens if all of a sudden a huge chunk of the population that was over the age of 65 disappears, and all of the resources that they have now gets funneled out into the inheritance. But what happens if all of a sudden a new policy kicks in just as that's happening, and it says, hey, if you inherited a house that, let's say, that's estimated value is of $1 million, that you must have a financial equitable amount in your assets or in your personal funds that can allocate, that you can own that home. And if you don't, they'll take it away from you. And now that $1 million home that you inherited, the government's saying, you can't afford this, so we're taking it away from you.
Yeah.
That's about to happen because they're going to provide all of those incentives, like, unfortunately, they're going to be needed, like universal basic income and all of these practices that are going to be needed, but they're going to come at a cost that we need to figure out ways to not just be content with it, but to actually be happy. It's okay, fine. If everybody's going to be at the same level, how do I differentiate myself, right? The emperor has no clothes, right? So that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to see people like me, crazy, talking like lunatics out there, building communities and building platforms just like you guys are. And we are going to differentiate ourselves in the new society, punk rock 101.
Well, I don't know how to get to the billionaire status, but I'm on board with that idea.
We'll get there. When you're different, everybody wants to be, either affiliated or associated with the different, for better or for worse. Right? That's my philosophy.
I'm generally fairly different, and that's about half true. I make a lot of enemies.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't really care.
But that's part of the process, man. Like if you're not, I say this to my team, even, and granted, I say that in order to incentivize not to hate me, but if you don't feel friction, if you don't have enemies, if you don't, rough the people's feathers, then you're not doing something right. Growth, there's a reason why growth gets associated with pain, right? Growing pains are a real thing. When you're pushing the boundaries of ideas, of collaboration, communication, business, anything, there has to be friction. There has to be enemies, because one of my, going back to anime that I love, there's an anime called One Piece, right? There's it's about pirates, and the main character Luffy, he wants to be free at all costs, right? He doesn't have a real ambition. He just wants to be free. And in order to become free, their equivalent of becoming billionaires to become the pirate king, right? The king of all the pirates. But what I love, it connects so much with that philosophy of Luffy, is that Luffy makes, like you mentioned, a lot of enemies, probably more enemies than allies, but those enemies are inspired by him, right? Because the ones that want to be evil become even more evil, right? That they associate with other evil people and become bigger, so they become bigger enemies, right? So then Luffy has to grow and become the persevere of their enemies, right? And I think that's how you grow. That's generally how you get to the billion. You must have a lot of enemies, right? You want to have billion-dollar companies as your enemies, right? Because if you're not, then your value is under them always, right? When they see you eye to eye and they're worth $1 billion, you have made yourself, you have hit the $1 billion market, right? When you're roughing up the feathers of these giant corporations, you're under level, right? That's how I see it.
I was gonna ask you that about an hour ago now. Like, does Meta or Valve or HTC, do you get pushback from them doing what you're doing or anything like that?
To be quite honest, no. I get actually a lot of love from them. HTC, first to mention, they have shown me a lot of love. The executives over there, from Alvin at the top, right? Edward Haggins, the director of enterprise, Brandon Connolly, right? Who's very active on Twitter, Dario. Like, honestly, the HTC high level team fully understands what I'm looking to do with Reboot Imagine, and they also understand that they are essentially a vendor, and sure that companies want to get the support and the the value added benefits of, maybe directly from HTC if they're a large entity that's procuring the headsets. But HTC starting to realize that, operations and growth, like we're talking, is going to require focus on company growth, not hand holding. So they definitely shows me and my team a lot of love. We get invited to a lot of events. Next week we're going to be at IAPA. HTC has a booth there. I'm going to go there and show them some love. Meta also, Meta for Business. When it got announced, they immediately, they knew that we were in a managed services provider space, so they reached out to us. They ensured that we had all of the right messaging and verbiage and understanding of their tools to make sure that we're able to handhold that at scale. Magic Leap, same there. They fully understand. We actually officially made a partnership last week with them, so you can procure Magic Leap devices at the Reboot Imagine Enterprise store. I at the moment I'm still talking to a few companies. I don't know. I really can't say if they love us just yet. So if I haven't mentioned them, you can make assumptions. But we're talking to all of them. We want to make sure that they all fully aware what we're looking to do. I don't ever want to be seen as the HTC, the Meta, the other, Magic Leap guy. I want to be seen
You're a Pico shop.
There we go. Pico, honestly, let me, Pico, I feel horrible for that. Pico,
Yeah.
Pico, their director of business development is helping us out, trying to get the Pico devices into our store. So that's also definitely a shout out to the Pico XR team. But yeah, as far as friction goes, man, that's the benefit. Once again, when you notice that everybody's in the primordial soup, how do you differentiate? The realities are there's no managed services provider in XR and spatial computing until Reboot Imagine showed up. There's companies like, that do, value added reselling. That's not what we do, right? We're actually bringing in the value, right? So if you tell us, Jose, we have 1,000 headsets that we want to get, and 80% of those people getting those headsets barely know how to use Microsoft Word, right? So
I mean, to be honest, I still barely know how to use Microsoft. I'm just kidding.
exactly. So you don't want to be hand holding people with stuff that you already know, right? And that's what we do. We make sure that IT directors and engineers and people that have traditional IT sees the value of that, and they just go like, oh man, I don't have to deal with teaching people how to use a laptop, right? Because that happened early on for IT departments when the laptops started coming in. That's education in real time, and we lost those companies, right? The traditional mom and pop computer shop, repair shops, they don't exist anymore, right? So it's a lot of things that I'm tackling at once. But when you have these conversations like the ones that we're having, you kind of start realizing it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's not just arcades, it's not just enterprise, it's not just the selling of the hardware. It's really the confidence that stitches all of them up for industry growth.
Do you do any like custom installs? Because some of the tweets you've made in the past look like, I don't know what the hell he's working on, but god damn, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, we are all about custom installations, right? The location-based entertainment industry, there's people love having custom experiences. I've done things from one of my favorite projects that definitely went viral on Twitter was we found there's an arcade here called Desolate Park. It was like a few years ago. The owner had purchased, I think it was from Russia, a bunch of Russian storages that had a bunch of old school arcade simulators that were manufactured
but
in
that might be the one I saw, because it looked like, are those race cars or these flying?
They were race
machines?
cars. Yeah,
like what the hell?
They were NASCAR simulators from like 1988. Right, so these were like pretty much like hydraulics, like actual real machinery, and the hardware, the company that made them, like went bankrupt like in 1996. I found an engineer, and the engineer told me like he was like, one, the motherboards that computer has were manufactured, like I think he told me they were manufactured in it was a Latin region. I think it was Argentina. And so the company that produced them in Argentina doesn't even exist anymore. And they didn't even know the company name. It was a whole ordeal. And so they were just used as showcase. And when I went into this arcade and I saw this, I went to the owner and I told him like, hey, these don't work what happens if I modernize these and I turn them into VR moving simulators, right? And the guy gave me like, hey, if you do it, I'll give you the marketing, the proposal, and we'll pay you for the hardware. And I did that for free. I did it for free. They purchased all the hardware. I gutted out the, all that hardware, replaced it, with a modern computer. I got rid of all the hydraulics because, simulators work much differently now. And I went with, I forgot the name of the company, but I think it's something Next Level Racing. They have a motion platform that is USB based, and it makes the chair, move. And the cool thing about it is that you can use any racing or computer chair to mount onto it. So it's a really cool, expensive hardware piece, but they purchased them, and we installed one in each one. We reached out, I think DPVR, who's a well-known VR headset from China, so really cheap Quest 1 clones, for lack of a better word, and we were able to get like 8 of them at about like $120 each. So we turned them into VR simulators. We replaced the screens with projectors, and
Wow.
it became a really cool showcase. And the owner was super excited and delighted. And he said, man, I'm really glad that you helped us with these 6. By the way, when I purchased this, it was actually 13 of them. So we have an additional 6 in Orlando. And that became even more of a success. We ended up doing that for them too. And yeah, it's what I love to do. We did that too with a few companies that I'm working that I can't talk about just yet. But a lot of well-known VR games are now thinking about making activations and ways that people don't just get to try the game, but when people are taking pictures, they look like they're playing the game, right? And that's the problem with VR, is that you always see a person just playing in VR, and then you have like a clip of what they're playing behind them, when you can build experiences that could show both at the same time. The Meta Store actually came the closest with their Beat Saber booth, right? Where you have a beautiful projector showing you playing the game in mixed reality. The problem there, they used the wrong technology, and there's lag like crazy. But there's potentials there, and yeah, that's kind of a huge part of what Reboot Imagine does, right? We focus on both industries of the enterprise and the arcade modding and custom installation space.
That's exciting, and I'm kind of now jealous. Like next time I visit Wookie, we might have to come down and visit.
Please, oh man, I'm ready. Like and definitely know the places that you're close to. That's the cool thing about Reboot Imagine, is that we have clients all over, right? We have clients in Hawaii, right? Kapoli Karaoke. Well, it was before they became a Reboot Imagine client. They were called Kapoli Karaoke. Now they're called Kapoli Karaoke VR, right? Because VR has been such a great tool for them, and then now they're offering VR booths, and it's really cool seeing these businesses expand. GameSpot Polygon is an airsoft shooting range that now has VR shooting ranges, right?
That's awesome.
It's super cool, and the only way that you can build such niche considerably businesses is by being a company that tells clients, hey dude, just tell us what you want to do and we're ready. It's somebody told me, like, man, Jose, that you guys are doing what the Mythbusters guys do on the side before, what they do now professionally, right? That's how they got known. They were being told, hey, we want to showcase these technology, and it's really cool that I get to do something similar but for VR. It's super awesome.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and kind of takes us way back to the start of the episode. But like, we were talking about arcades and mixed reality and all that stuff. But even games like Space Pirate Trainer, when you have that, like, it'll just build the arena for you, and actually, again, just needing the space to go do that with people and be able to run around, like, that is just mind-blowing. And to have that space, and I don't know what all you have planned for those kinds of things, but like, I mean, your imagination is all you need, and you can
exactly. And technology infrastructure too, right? The realities are that even Space Pirate Trainer, when they brought in their free, their large scale option, it was when Meta had just introduced, large scale tracking, right?
Yeah.
So things like positional, coherent or edge computing, as people like to call it, hasn't really had gone mainstream at that time. Now we have things like HTC self-tracking tracker that are essentially base stations that will be able to be locked into a physical space. So now, no matter what headsets you're potentially using, you get to play, potentially Space Pirate Trainer with a Pico headset and a Quest headset, and they have the same exact layout markers because they're, the grids are being handled by third-party hardware. So that's things that maybe we're going to probably see a lot more in arcades and locations that, are using these technologies to take them to the next level. Haptics are something that a lot of people take for granted, right? We have, Bhaptics and all these companies, but there's OO and there's other companies that are now, Tesla Suit, that are just, taking that to insane levels. And these are, $5,000 to $10,000 products at times. And we, arcades will be able to financially make those costs, feasible. The Void, I'm sure you guys have heard of the Void, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the very first doing, high-end polished virtual reality, for better or for worse at the time. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have realized that backpack VR was not the way to go, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that inspired companies to start looking at all-in-one headsets. And now we're at the point where arcades are realizing all-in-one headsets are a good half step, right? So now we're going to be looking at PCVR, wireless PCVR, right? Cloud edge rendering PCVR. And that's
I just want to
where,
rent a PC to do that so I can play Cyberpunk in VR.
oh, dude. Oh, yeah,
For
exactly.
like 2 months.
Oh, it's oh, that's oh man, I forgot the name of an arcade, but there's arcades that are doing that now where you can like rent
Crazy.
high level like production equipment for an hour, and you can play, the games that you want to play with all the mods and all that, pumped up and cranked up. It's yeah, man, it's we're back to culture building, man. It's yeah, I think I don't know what other way to express it, but I'm just so ready for it. More than anything, probably.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, man, like we've talked to a lot of devs, mainly devs, but there's always the dev that we've heard this a couple of times. Like, I haven't talked to anyone for 6 months till we've had this chat. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then we have, there's devs that are just beyond excited, but like your enthusiasm for VR, like
It's not
amazing.
just about your game or this.
Yeah,
it's like
it's
you're
just
like pushing
the
it all forward. We
entire
love it.
platform as a whole, just trying to make it happen is like, again, hats off. If I was wearing a hat, I'd do the hat off thing, but dude, that's
Headsets off with it.
Yeah. Headsets off. There we go. I love that. Oh man, thank you. That means, to be honest with you, it's what I do it for. Right? A lot of people say that of that, but anybody that has met me, and you can ask anyone, for better or for worse, money is not. As somebody who says that they want to get to 1 billion, money is not my inspiration. It's not what I'm going after. It's just I'm fully aware that if I want to get satellites and build decentralized internet,
Yeah.
or get all that,
Money's
it's
a
going to
tool.
require exactly.
Yep.
It's an ultimate tool, and a lot of people get caught up in the tool of money and they don't realize, and it's something that I will never, and at least, if I ever stop, people like yourselves will definitely make sure of that to remind me. You're not going to get anywhere in life if people lose respect for you, genuine respect. And companies that, and I mean, I don't have to mention companies that you can think of any VR company, they don't have that respect anymore. None of them do. And the reason for that is they're vendors. That's exactly what was needed. And that's actually a very good thing. Now we need to celebrate and champion the actual industry, the mindset, what it means to be a modern VR user, what it means to grow an industry. Like the company I built I feel like it's something that's needed for the people that need it, and the people that don't need it respect it. That's what I love about this space, is that I wanted to build something that the developers, that, as you mentioned, the engineers, they have a place to call home. it sucks that, you know, engineers have to find jobs where their work is being hidden behind NDAs and their growth gets stagnated because they can't talk about the cool things that they can, or they're not allowed to tell people that they work for this company because the founders are afraid that they get sniped from, you know, or get a counter proposal. It's something that we don't realize. It's that engineers are the commodity that are building this industry, and we need them. Like, we need
Yeah.
them. We need to talk to them. You know, developers, like, they have a big chunk of my heart, right? But developers are following the templates of what the engineers are building. And what happens if all the engineers that are building these things are part of one company and one company alone? Yeah, I built this company for people like you guys, right? That want to learn about this industry, that want to grow, that want to, you know, not worry about the boogeyman that is the modernization of VR, but actually have the conversation that we are, right? Because that's something that I joke a lot with my friends, and it's like, you know what stops you from fearing the boogeyman? Introduce them to the devil. You know what I mean? So like we're so caught up in talking about all of the scary potentials of VR and all that stuff, when it's like, hey, all of that is already happening. This is what you should be being fear of. This is what you need to work in order to you know, to elevate yourself and to build, like we mentioned, value for ourselves. Because the truth is, we're about to enter a era where we are not going to be able to, and I say this with a lot of pain in my heart, because as you can tell, I love showing my intelligence and my skill and my value through my work, right? So we're going to enter an era where our work will not be the way, or our personal work is not going to be the way that we find self-value anymore.
Right.
It's going to be how we connect with others. And as much as I love that and how beautiful it is, some developers don't know how to connect with people. Some engineers don't. We need, that means that community conversations, empathy infrastructure is what I call it within my company. Like,
Good
my
term,
COO, my COO, Laura Pisa, she comes from a hospitality background. And when we started building Reboot Imagine, one of her biggest imposter syndrome factors was that she comes from the hospitality background. And I remember, and till this day, I think it's the best super skill for Reboot Imagine, because she's able to have conversations with what we call the normies, the people that don't know what VR is, right? The people that fear AI, the people that have the fear of losing their jobs. And we get to tell them is that, hey, you are going to lose your job, because that job was not meant to be done by you. That was meant to be by a robot. You are meant to be more than what you are. You're meant to be a creator. Humans are enhancers. If we were meant to do a robot's job, we would have been robots, right?
Yeah.
So we are the collaborators. We are the enhancers. We are the managers of or rather the masters of the domains that we fall in love for. And yeah, that's man, once again, I will not take the compliments for granted. I will ensure that that Reboot Imagine and myself continues earning that praise.
That's awesome. And, you know, we've had that discussion a few times, like, in many different forms, like, you know, oh, once VR gets to the AAA space, like, the community will just die away. And so glad to hear you know, you've thought about this. Clearly, you've thought a lot about this, and have kind of seen the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, no, this is how we shift and where we go with it. So, you know, it's awesome to hear that, because that really never clicked in my brain. So I'm glad. But you, having heard you say, like, it makes a lot of sense. So that's really, really, really neat. So
Sometimes I like to think of things weirdly. So when you say, like, see the light at the end of the tunnel, a lot of people, when they're not positive and they're not being, like we mentioned earlier, Jose mentioned it. If you're not, remember the exact words you used, but if you're not seeing things for like what they are, you'll miss kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if people can't see the end of the light of the tunnel, it's kind of like, well, maybe the tunnel has got a
Not-
corner in it and you just can't see what you can't see. It's still gonna be fine.
Or that corner that you're mentioning is by design.
Yeah.
Right. When I think about VR and I think about knowledge access, right? a lot of people think that it's an agenda that's pushing, you know, the lack of education, the lack of resource information. But the truth is, no, this is a business agenda. Like 100%, this is not, you know, ideology or none of that. This is, how do you build the perfect non-playable character? By making them non-playable characters, by feeding them information that turns you into a preset statistic, right? If you behave like a statistic and you have everything received like a statistic, and you're running a 9 to 5 and clocking in and clocking out like a statistic, when you look at it at a very high level, I'm sorry to break it to you, you're a non-playable character, right? So how do you break out of that and become a main character in this RPG that we call life, right? It's looking at the rules. And I used to do this all the time when I was a kid, when I would play racing games. And it's actually a well-known quote from the movie Ready Player One, right? Which is Holiday says, what happens if we drive in reverse really, really fast? Right? What if we go the opposite direction? Everybody's going this way. Like, I used to love playing Mario Kart or Top Gear for the Super Nintendo, and just go in reverse and keep driving really fast and getting the blinker wrong way, wrong way, wrong way. And I would be dodging all of the cars coming in my direction. You know what I mean? Like, that's exactly, I truly believe that's why I believe I've been able to build a culture, to build a reputation, to be loud. I'm going after the road less traveled.
Now,
Right.
If you drive in reverse or go the wrong way on the track, and you do that at Universal with like they have the at least in the weekend or so before 9/11 when I was there, they had the big NASCAR things all linked, and your boss used to be at the time some sort of race car driver. I don't remember what. So he's in there trying to do his best, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I go in the wrong way, and then they get mad at you, and then they throw you out.
Yeah,
that's the friction. Because that was me.
Yeah, exactly, man.
So
it's
drive in reverse.
Drive reverse. And quite frankly, that means that you're ahead of everybody. It truly is, because that means that, I joke around, maybe it's hip hop culture, but we say I got that dog in me. You know what I mean? That's the broken gear in your mind. That's what makes you, right? It's like you see all of these people telling you this is the preset, template of how an experience should be, and you're like, nah, I want that. I want to break. I want to see the curtain behind all of this, right? It's the industry needs that. The industry needs that. I'm sure eventually, I'm going to probably stumble into what you sound quite seasoned on, Mookie, which is building on pretty seasoned enemies. But I truly believe that eventually I'm going to, ruff the wrong feathers, because as this industry continues growing and continues, as I mentioned, the primordial soup of it all, we're going to eventually, and it's happening already, right? That a lot of people don't realize that the same games that work, let's say, in a Quest 2 are 100% portable to a Pico. Like, sure, you might have little differences, like the controller layout might be a little different, but the game runs the same. There's no, these are all designed by the same software output. There's no differentiator. So what happens when a company like mine starts building that momentum, starts letting people know, like, hey, those APKs are the same.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, right? It needs to happen, right? Because a lot of people forget, and you mentioned Xbox versus Japanese consoles like the PlayStation. That was happening between PlayStation and Xbox, right? Where they were trying to create differentiating software barriers between them, and the developers got mad. The developers said, wait a minute, you're telling me they have to build a whole entire game for this console and not that one? And they forced, now, if you look at the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 5, their internals are the same. And now we're back to that conversation. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So port exclusivities are no longer a thing. So now timed exclusivities are coming into factor. So I think that VR is going to move in that direction too. And I think it's taking way longer than it needs to. So we need to get loud. My company needs to, continue its messaging, and, it's I mentioned it, like I'm here to ruffle the feathers, like I'm here to make those enemies too. So it's needed.
Yeah, like you said, punk rock.
Punk rock. Exactly. We're yeah.
What's
Well,
your punk rock name?
Oh man.
Like Sid Vicious kind of name. What's your punk rock?
Oh man. I would say Jose the VR Tech.
I knew it was gonna be Jose. It's just you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so weird. I used to hate my name so much, and now I champion and love it so much because I don't know any other Jose in the VR industry who's a VR tech, right? Or it's I think that's the perfect punk rock name for that reason.
Yeah.
There's nobody like me. And I hope to continue it that way, right? Like the when somebody, you know, when I start seeing the Jose WR Tech clones, I might go even crazier, right? So as I said, I'm here to to be loud and to ensure that the amazing kind words that you guys have of me and my company continue being met, right? So I don't ever want to be like, man, Jose, you're stagnating, man. Like there's another VR tech over there. What's going on? You know what I mean? I'm competitive, so
You
that's
better build that Gundam.
there, I better get on that Gundam, man. And I don't know if you're noticing, but I'm making some cool stuff back there with robotics. So
I've been seeing things back there. I don't know what it all is.
oh man, nothing gonna possible just yet. But yeah, man.
That thing's looking at me.
Oh, are you look? Oh no, I thought you were. So oh, I thought I have
You
a
can
few
see where I was pointing because I'm not on camera at the moment.
I have a GPT little robot assistant that I'm working on that I'll be hopefully selling on our store soon. That
Nice.
I'm trying to like, yeah, that's what I love doing, man. I love being able to just, and if I get to do what I'm doing now for as long as I can, man, I think that's a success for me, honestly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope you do. I mean, you're something special, man. Like
I appreciate it.
I don't want to end this chat. We're having such a good time, but it's
Almost
probably
2 hours
past,
up.
Yeah, I
it's
know,
past
right?
time. But
Trust me.
so glad to finally talk to you. It's such a great time.
Oh, man.
I hope you can do this until you can't. Like
Oh, trust
Until you
me.
don't
I
want
give
to.
you exactly. I give you
Yeah.
my word that I will be focused on this until potentially I can't push any further. I say that honestly, even when I pitch my company to investors, you know what I mean? Like the only way I get taken out from Rebirth Imagine or taken out from this industry is by physically, literally being taken out. So I have no intention of leaving. I love this space. I love what I'm doing. I love my team. I love this industry. I love you guys. So
Aw.
it's just so much love, man. It's my rocket fuel. So I can't see myself ever losing the momentum as long as I continuously, you know, keep being reminded by amazing people like yourselves in this industry.
Yeah. Thanks, man. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, little over 2 hours here, so we'll let you get back to your world. I just have to say, like, we were supposed to talk last night, and your message, just like, hey guys, I was working on stuff so hardcore, I feel ill. Like, that's your dedication, man. That's passion. That's
Yeah.
freaking awesome.
Always, man. And I made sure, you know, as soon as I sent that message, I made sure that I rested up. I did my little, workout, pumped myself up a few minutes before, I'm talking to Wookie, I'm talking to PJ, let's go. So hopefully I brought in that energy for you guys,
Oh,
man.
definitely, yeah. Like,
Awesome.
I feel a little bad because I can't match it, but
Oh, trust me. At this point, I worry for the day that somebody matches this energy because I think it will be like negative magnetism, positive magnetism, just like. So hopefully
They can't exist together.
No, I don't think so. Hopefully there isn't somebody that can match this energy because then at that point, then yeah, I met my arch nemesis, and I don't want a Lex Luthor just yet to my
Yeah, you're
Superman.
not ready
So
yet.
I'm not ready for that. Let me get to the billion, then I'll take on Elon or whoever wants it. So we'll go from there. Thank you guys again for having me.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah, it's
man.
been great.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
I'm doing the peace sign, but nobody's looking.
You're just like,
It's about scale. No, I love that guy. I've been
Yeah.
following him, like I said, since like the first day I joined Twitter on this account to hang out. I'm like, that guy looks cool.
Yeah, and we didn't start the podcast for this reason, but it's why we're still going. Is once we did start talking to people, just that passion. It's
addictive.
I just want to be around it,
Yeah.
or like help it, or whatever we can do. Like, because I mean, I have passion for things, but like my passion's like at a 4, where his is like at a 20.
Yeah, I don't know how we get there. We've talked about that before. Like our dad growing up screaming at the TV for "Go Reggie" for the Packers in the
Yeah.
90s. Like I don't know how people get that amped up for stuff. Like I get excited about things, but I'm not screaming at the TV like, run
Yeah.
into that end zone, you bastard. I don't. I'm more like the hopefully chill and laid back compared to that. But also I'm kind of jealous because
Yeah.
I want to champion that stuff. But it's
Yeah.
just it's contagious talking to some of these folks. Definitely, Jose is one of them.
For sure. But yeah, anyone watching the video, listening to the audio, will have links to all his stuff. Check him out. He is really championing VR like in many different ways. Like we only got to scratch the surface on a couple of them. He's doing so much more than that even, and that's insane. So check it out, look into it, help him out, support him.
Yeah, he's one of the real deals. So if you find yourself without passion for VR, follow Jose and get a little bit of his, and then see what you can do with it. And his little fan that he had, if you noticed his floor fan, like his tower fan, had
Mhm.
like the blinking lights and the blue thing. My cat was about to tear down my projector screen because he liked the little blue spinny stick light, I think. He was looking at me and he was looking at it, and I was like, don't you do it right now. He's messing with my start button. Why? Come here, buddy.
And that's why you need a camera. No, I'm just kidding.
And that's why he needs to get fed, I guess. But no,
But
this has been a good episode. We've had our first two back have been 2 hours each.
yeah,
Good.
that's. I keep
Good
telling Beth,
gifts.
like, yeah, I'll only be in there an hour. And she's like, uh-huh.
That's when the old Batman movie better make it 10.
Yeah. Yep.
Half the people probably won't get that, but get some culture.
Go watch the movie. It's worth it.
The old Michael Keaton.
But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, listening. We're going to call it an episode here. So this was episode 151 with Jose, the VR tech. I've said as much as I can. He's awesome. Follow him. Otherwise, we'll be back soon.
Are we calling it a week or two? Give them some expectations. We were planning on doing every other week, but we owed Jose because he wanted to go right when the multiplayer back end of our booth fell apart.
We're still figuring out. We're probably more likely going to do 2 episodes a month and kind of carry that cadence and see how that works out.
Unless there's a special like this one where we owed Jose one, but yeah.
And I'm still thinking about like doing live stuff, doing the episode live and all that. We didn't do this one because the last one I had a few issues and I'm almost lost the episode, so I don't want to do that. So we're just taking it nice and easy and slow.
Yep.
But see how it goes.
One love, peace, love. Hope you guys are good for the next couple of weeks. Well, I mean, we gave you a double episode, so cut it in half. Go back in time, stop listening halfway through, and listen to the other half.
Make your own cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Just find a good spot, pause it, and come back next week. Be like, what's Wookie gonna say?
And in mid sentence. If you have to cut one of the three of us off from this episode, just feel free to cut me off because usually what I say isn't really cohesive sometimes. I'm just kidding. Hope to see you guys soon.
Later.